starting now. We'll wait a couple more minutes, though. We're waiting for just a couple more to get online, and then we will kick off. Can everyone on the phone hear us here at Mark?
Yes. I can.
Yes.
Great. You guys are coming in well on our end. Molly, can you hear us as well?
I can, thank you.
Great. And real quick, I'm going to have the individuals here at Mark go around the room and just say who they are and who they're with, and then we will kick off formally, okay? And we'll start with Adam, since he brought us all together today.
This is Adam Geffert. I'm the Public Safety Communications Planning and Administrative Manager.
And he manages the RITMA listserv that all of you are on, or will soon be on. We'll make sure you get added if you were not on that formally.
I'm Jay Kierman. I'm with Research Services and IT here at MARC.
I'm Donna Gomez with Johnson County Government.
And I'm Angie Laurie with MARC, Shared Services Manager for the organization. So welcome and thanks for carving out an hour of your afternoon to go over some helpful information about the nationwide cybersecurity review. We have the pleasure of having with us today Molly Gifford, who is the Member Programs Manager from MSISAC. She has been helping us to understand some of the key elements of the nationwide cybersecurity review survey that will kick off on Monday. And so a focus over the next month is for MARC to provide training opportunities for communities to learn more about this free self-assessment tool and to encourage participation in the survey by the cities and counties in the region. To give you a little bit of update on how that came about, many of you I noticed on the webinar have participated in the Regional Cybersecurity Strategic Framework and have been part of that conversation. If you have not, over the last year, a task force for that work has been meeting to review and understand the best and most appropriate cybersecurity standards as a recommended standard for the region. And in August, a subgroup led by Tony Sage, with many of you participating in that group, defined the CIS control as the recommended standard for the region. And MSISAC, the organization that Molly represents, works in partnership with the Center for Internet Security, CIS. CIS is the umbrella organization for those entities. We're fortunate in that MSISAC is getting ready to initiate a national survey that's been around for a number of years. And some of you have likely participated in this tool already, the NCSR. Some of you maybe have not, but it is free, it is confidential to the individual entity, individual government entity that participates in it. And we're lucky to be able to coordinate with Molly, who is going to help us aggregate the anonymous data from the Kansas City metropolitan area to be able to provide a baseline so that the individual cities can receive their individual results, but also a peer benchmark against how you stand against the region and also cities and counties nationally. So it's free again, and we want to promote as many communities as possible to take advantage of the tool, and want to promote training that can help make that as easy as possible. So that's the purpose of today's webinar. I'm not going to go in any further, but I'm going to pass the baton to Molly, who's going to walk us through some steps that will shed a lot of light on the tool.
Great. Thank you, Angie, and thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your day to join us. We are really excited to be partnering with MARC and all of you on this exciting adventure. A little bit about what is the NCSR. So it's the Nationwide Cybersecurity Review. You'll often hear it referenced as the NCSR. It is a no-cost, anonymous annual self-assessment. It's designed to measure gaps in capabilities of state, local, tribal, and territorial government cybersecurity programs. Based on the National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework, and it is sponsored by both DHS and the MSISAC, and in partnership with NACIO, NACO, and GMIS International. It's important to also note that although it's encouraged, MSISAC membership is not mandatory to participate. Again, the only requirement is that you're an SLTT member, a government member of an SLTT community. So this includes public utility bureaus, school districts, fire districts, water districts, other local utilities, regions, transit authority, public hospitals, etc. So what are some benefits in participating? One of the main things is that you can utilize your NCSR to fulfill your justification requirement for cybersecurity investments under the Homeland Security Grant Program. We've heard some great feedback on people utilizing this tool and obtaining grant funding. Also, receive metrics specific to your organization. Essentially, this is your first year participating. You're going to develop a benchmark. Serves as a great communication tool. Now it's not just a feeling of what you need, but you have some data to back up. You know, here's where we're falling short. These are the resources that are needed to improve in these areas. Also, by continuously participating, you can track your year-to-year progress. Use metrics to identify gaps in your security program. One of the big things is that you're going to be able to have a peer group. So you're going to have your score versus your peers. Every year after the NCSR closes, we do a brief survey to the end users, and we kind of want to gauge what are you doing with the data and why are you participating, right? What value are you getting out of this? One of the main reasons individuals are participating is for those peer-to-peer reports. So right off the bat, you get a metric on where you stand, but what is it really telling you if you don't know where you stand in relation to your peers? Last year, we had added an additional 18 subsector peer groups. We're going to go into them a little bit further later in the presentation. And for HIPAA compliant agencies, you can translate your NCSR scores to the HIPAA security rule scores for an automatic self-assessment tool. We're super excited. We've already had over 150 new organizations register. That number was a couple weeks ago, continues to climb, so we're excited to see what this year brings. Okay, quick with the agenda, we're going to talk about the origin of the NCSR, go over the question set and response scale. I'm going to do a little tutorial on the platform so you're aware of what to expect when you do sign in, how to navigate the portal. I'm going to talk about what do you do with the data that you get from the portal. I'm going to go over a template that was designed with some key talking discussion points for the end user to talk to key stakeholders on the metrics with. Also go over the CIS controls, which have been mapped to the framework, and talk about the crosswalk to the HIPAA security rule. We'll go over some training opportunities within MARC, and then we will answer any questions you may have. Okay, so a brief background on the NCSR. So back in 2009, DHS was directed by Congress to develop a cyber network security assessment that would measure the gaps and capabilities of SLTP's government cybersecurity programs. In 2011, the NCSR was conducted for the first time by DHS. Then in 2013, DHS partnered with the MSISAC to develop and conduct the second NCSR. And then since 2013, the NCSR has been conducted on an annual basis. When the NCSR first took off, a different question set and framework was used, so that in 2015, the question set was redesigned to align with the NIST cybersecurity framework. So 2018 marks the 7th year the NCSR has been conducted on an annual basis, and the 4th year that the same question set has been used, allowing for that year-to-year data analysis trending, right? Also, every year after the NCSR closes, we aggregate the data and we have a summary report on what are our key findings. Every other year, that report is presented to Congress. It's completely confidential. An entity's name is not called out. All of the data is aggregated, but it really serves as a tool to voice the SLTT community's needs, right? Essentially, that's where the funding is going to come from. Also want to talk about the fact that the NCSR is led by a work group. So at the MSISAC, we have several work groups. The metrics work group is the one that really leads and drives the NCSR. That work group is made up of members of the MSISAC across the country. So they're your peers. They get together. Next week they're coming in and we're kind of mapping out what we want to do next year, areas of improvement, more value add, et cetera. So I just like to stress that it's not that the MSISAC or DHS is saying, hey, this is what you guys should be doing. It's really this work group that kind of drives it. Okay, so it's always important to kind of talk about the framework. I'm going to do a very high-level overview. So the NCSR leverages the 108 subcategories of the NIST CSF. So last year, or the beginning of this year, they updated the framework, NIST did. We have mapped those updates over to the question set. So they've added supply chain risk management as a category. At a very high level with the framework, and this is going to kind of tie into the reports that you get, you have your functions. So you have your 5 functions: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. And then you have your categories. So within the identify function, you have asset management, business environment, governance, risk assessment, etc. And as you can see, it goes down. So when we're done with this, so when we get into the metrics of it all, you're going to have your score at a function level. That is basically the subcategories rolled up, the categories rolled up to the functions, and then you're going to have category scores, which rolls the subcategories to the categories.
Molly, if I might add, because MSISAC has mapped the results of the NCSR using the NIST framework to what that would look like translated into the CIS controls, we'll be able to see how communities in this region measure against the 20 CIS controls, and in particular, the first basic 6 controls that are the focus of the work in this region.
Yeah, thank you, Angie. And we're going to go over that specific report, and Angie's going to talk a little bit more on what direction you guys are going to take in really, drilling down on the 6 controls. And we're going to touch base on that in a little bit, all which map back to the NIST CSF. So lots of great opportunities. Anything else to add, Ange?
Thank you.
Okay. So the response scale. So the NCSR utilizes a maturity scale that assesses how an organization is addressing the different activities within the NIST CSF. Here is the maturity scale. It allows participants to indicate how formalized cybersecurity activities are within their organization. So following risk management principles, the framework does allow for organizations to identify which activities they may have chosen to not implement because of their own risk assessment. So as I mentioned, the metrics work group leads the NCSR as a starting point, kind of gave everybody a minimum recommendation. That minimum recommendation is the implementation and process. So over here, you'll see the options that you have to choose when you're taking the assessment, and we'll go over what that's going to look like. But I do like to point out on this slide that each response is associated with a score. So you have not performed has a number 1 all the way up to optimized, which has a score of 7. So if you were to answer a question and you picked optimized, that 7 is going to roll into the calculation, which I'll talk about in the following slide. Here's kind of just a sample of what you're going to see once you get into the platform. I am going to actually bring us into the platform, so I'll kind of do a show and tell once we get there. But at the very high level, you can see you have your question set. So we do have some demographic questions, post-survey questions, and privacy questions. And then you have the 5 functions. So when you come in, you're going to, utilize these tabs, and you're going to be presented in the Identify tab. Here's the question. IDAM1, physical devices and systems within the organization are inventoried. You're going to have a little drop-down box over here, which ties back up to the maturity level response scale that we were just discussing, that you'll pick that response. And then I'll talk more about this when we log in as well. There is a section where you can place notes. So essentially, to say you take it this year, okay, you come back next year, you can reference what you did in 2018, and you can look at your notes. Maybe, I chose this answer because of this going on, et cetera. So it kind of serves as a look back to kind of remind you why you chose that answer, or utilize it however you feel fit. So I always think it's important to talk about how the scores are calculated. So again, the 2 main takeaways from here is you're going to have the CIS controls mapped to the framework, which we're then going to talk about how we can look at that data, and then you're also going to have the scores on the platform rolled up to the framework, the NIST CSF framework. So as this is just the recover function, within here you have the categories. So we have, right here, they partially documented standards and or procedures is what they chose to respond to that question with, which has a score of 4. So the average, since it's only one question, is just a 4. But then if you come down here, you can see that there was 2 questions within this category, both with a score of 4 against the average of that is a 4. Down here, the 3 questions, this was the response. This is the number associated with that response, and the average of 3 numbers is 3.33. So then we take the average of all 3 of those categories, which is 3.78, and that equals the recover function average. Okay, let's dive into the portal. Does anyone have any questions at this time? Or Angie, do you want to add anything about what we've discussed so far?
I don't have anything to add. Does anyone on the call have anything?
Not at this time.
Okay, great. Okay, so the portal. So the process is going to be, and we'll talk about this at the end, you'll register to participate in the NCSR. We will get an email from you, and then we will provide you access to the platform. So you'll go to our website, you'll register. We will then send you an email, and you're going to get an email from noreply@archer with your login credentials. So essentially, when you come in, this is what the screen's going to look like. Very simple. This is your general user page. Okay, so it has the maturity scale that we talked about, how you can access your organization, some helpful links, contact information, a little bit on the framework, and within each dashboard that we'll go to, you'll see that there's a little bit of a verbiage on what the dashboard shows. So this will be everybody's first view. So once you come in, you'll click on Review Your Organization. And this is just a test account, but you're going to come over here and click on your organization. So here, you're going to see your organization name, your org ID. This doesn't play any value later. We're hoping to implement a new report after the assessment closes. I'll talk about that a little later. And this is the org user, so that'll be the individual's name who is assigned to this account. So again, I just want to stress that when you come on here, nobody else has access to your information. The only person who can see this are the org users tied to that account. There can be multiple org users tied to one account. So with that being said, when we start to look at the data, it is only that individual or individuals who are tied to this account that have access to that data. You can download it, you can export it, you can print it and email it as well, but it will only be those individuals who have access to that. Then we have our entity type, and this individual selected Hipaa compliance. You'll see that on the survey when we get there, and it'll list the number of years participated. And then this information is not holds any value. So down here are your tabs. So if you participated in 15 or 16, the questionnaires are going to be in this tab. In 17, the questionnaire is here. So we can see that it's 100%. The entity type is state, et cetera, and the year was 2017. So I completed a survey so I could trigger some of the metrics, but I also have a blank survey. So when you come in, you're just going to see this blank survey. So once you come in, you're going to click over here on the questionnaire ID, and this is the actual assessment that you'll be taking. Important to note on here, you have your progress status, and up on the left-hand corner, you have options to save as you go throughout the assessment. So, I encourage you to save periodically. If you're going to come in for 30 minutes one day, just be sure to save. You can also save and close, which will exit out of the survey and bring you back to your organization. So compliance drivers. One of the reports that you're going to get is that Hipaa security crosswalk. So it's the Hipaa security rule mapped to the NIST CSF, which is the NCSR question set. It serves as a gap analysis. It's something that you can take away on your end. And I did talk with Angie. We are going to provide a recording to you on how to utilize that data and what to look for. We did a WebEx not too long ago that I think would be valuable. But the only way you're going to get that report is if you select Hipaa. I do encourage you to select other ones. The only report that we have available at the time is the Hipaa one. But again, it's on our path. We do want to do the CGIS next. It's just on our list of things to do at this time. So here you have submit self-assessment. Until it's complete, you're only going to see in progress. Once you've answered at 100%, you'll change it to submit. So submit is not going to appear until your progress status reaches 100%. It's important to change it to submit because it's going to trigger all of your reports. I will be going in daily to make sure that that is being done, or I'll do it on my end if need be. So once you're logged in, our maturity scale is right here. So as you're answering it, you can always scroll up and reference, okay, what does optimized mean, et cetera. So these are our demographic questions. One of the new peer groups that I'm going to discuss shortly is going to be around cybersecurity governance. So essentially, based on the data on this demographic page, if you choose centralized and you're a centralized organization, once the NCSR closes, you'll have access to your peer-to-peer reports. So you'll be able to say, I am a city, and we have a centralized cybersecurity governance structure. So you'll get your scores versus the average of all other cities who have a centralized cybersecurity governance structure. This is our first year rolling that out. We're pretty excited to see what that shows us. So then once you're in here, again, you're just going to click on these tabs, and you're going to have your drop-down box. So we're in the Identify tab, and the question is, physical devices and systems within the organization are inventoried. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to choose the appropriate answer. And I'm just going to, go all the way down and fill this out. You can track your completion as you go. So this is going to ID as identify. You'll know that you've completed that when it gets to 100%. And then once you're done, you'll also notice that the progress status is at 100%, and it'll show you that 124 of the 124 questions are completed. And then you will submit it, or we'll submit it for you if need be. Okay, so now we've submitted, we've taken the survey, we've submitted it. What happens next? So I'm going to go over the different dashboards in the platform. So again, this is your main page that you're going to come to when you sign in. And then we have a policy dash. So this is just an area that provides you access to informative references that you can click in, you can utilize. The data is all housed here for you to access. So my current results, I do want to remind everybody, please read what's in this dashboard. A lot of the reports are not available until after the assessment closes, especially the peer-to-peer reports. There's a lot of massaging. We have to put cities with cities and et cetera to create the peer groups. But what you have right away is your current score. So over here, you're going to see that there's a drop-down box. These are the function level results. So you have your identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. You can drill it down to the subcategories. So these are all of the subcategories within identify, all of the subcategories within protect. Over here with this little drop-down arrow, you can do display report, and you can modify. I'm sorry, that's not what I wanted to select. Bear with me. You can do chart data only, chart only, or chart and data. I kind of like chart and data because you get the graph and you also get, the numbers as well below it. You can export it, so you can just click on the export button, or you can email it. When you email it, it generates an email. My email is actually not up right now, but it basically, here we go. It puts this link in the body of the email. So say I took this and I wanted to send it to Angie. If I sent this to Angie, she would have to have login credentials tied to this account to access it. So, I mean, you could email it to yourself and you'd be able to view it because you're tied to that organization. But as far as anybody else having access to it, they would also need to have login credentials and be tied to your organization. Also, just want to note that the MSISAC is not FOIA approved, so nobody's going to be requesting this information. So you guys are covered there. So this is the one report that has your current results. We also have our year-to-year results. This test organization participated in 17 and 18. So this is very similar to what we saw before, but it has 2017 and 2018. Again, I can come in and display the report. I have my graph. So this is just a very powerful tool as well. So, you know, essentially when you're done with 2018, you can take this and we're going to talk about discussion topics on it, but you can show that, hey, this is what we decided to do in 2017. You know, the controls that were mapped to the detect, those are what we worked on, and in doing that, you know, we improved our score to a 4.09 from a 3.20. So valuable communication tool, and we can map the controls all back to that as well. And then we have our year-to-year peer profile. This one, again, is going to be, if it's your first year participating, the peer-to-peer profiles are not released until after the assessment closes. But essentially, this is your org for 2017. You're going to have the different eye views. So we have 2017 and 2016 and all the way down to 15. Once 2018 closes, you'll see a new view. So this is my org scores. So this is named our little test division, but essentially say I was a local. I'll have my org scores versus all of the other locals' averages org scores. Say if I was a local and I was a city. So I could be part of multiple peer groups. So I would have my score versus the average of all locals, but then further broken down to the average of all cities. And again, we kind of went over, you can click in here, display the report, export it, etc. Compliance reports. This is the Hipaa security rule crosswalk report. So you will click in here, and here you have the report. So it is telling me that Hipaa security rule, you know, this is the rule, is crosswalked to IDAM1, and then I scored, and then the answer that you chose. So I can export this, do it in CSV. Okay, click here. Bear with me. Okay. So then again, this is just exporting it in Excel. What I would suggest one could do, I could freeze view. And then I could sort this in multiple different ways. You could take this is kind of a self-assessment, you know, for you to have on your end and definitely have a trail, but I could sort it by the response that I chose. So maybe I want to look at ones that are partially documented or documented policy, right? You can then come in here and sort it, or I want to look at a specific rule or a specific category, subcategory, et cetera. Could tie the controls back here as well if that was a route that you wanted to go. And then we have the questions mapped to the answer. So this is just a report. This really is a report designed for you to be able to export to provide for the cybersecurity justification requirement. Same concept. This is the question. This is your answer. You can export it, etc. And then we have the 2018 CIS controls version 7 mapped to the framework as well. Let me export this. Okay, so here we have the, you know, it's CIS control version 7, IDAM1. So inventory of and control of hardware assets is mapped to NIST-CSF IDAM1 I-scored implementation and process. So here you can map the different CIS control. So right here you can see all of these are CIS control 1, and then we have control 2 and control 3 all the way through 6. So say you wanted to just look at the top 6 controls. Okay, they are coming out in order. So you could just look here, and Angie, you're going to provide more instruction on what they're going to be doing with this, correct? As far as next steps with.
Yeah, one thing that Mark is working on, and I sent out a sample with the materials supporting today's webinar, is how to add some tools to this Excel file that you could either copy these results into another Excel file and it would map your results in a more graphic way or a more summarized way that really speaks to the first 6 basic CIS controls. So the focus has really been getting these training events set up right now, but between now and the middle of October, we will be confirming with Molly's team that we have the right framework in place to provide a little bit better, more simplified report that uses this output from their platform. Does that make sense?
Yes, yep. And again, Angie and I have been working with the CIS controls team as well, kind of to map out that plan. So excited to see where that goes. And we do have hopes in adding more of the controls, the subcategories to the framework as well in 2019.
We appreciate MSITech's willingness to partner in mapping the 2 standards, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's an exciting opportunity. Okay, so for the platform, that's a very, it's very basic. So you're going to go take the questionnaire. This is your dashboard. So you're going to use this to access the different reports. This also it serves the same purpose up here, but, same concept. You can choose the different dashboards, my organization, etc. Okay. So talking about the data, bear with me one second. So we got, some feedback. Hey, this is great. We're taking the NCSR. What do we do with this data? So the work group that is in charge, really leads the NCSR, we got together and we put together a template. So when you're done with the NCSR, you can say, okay, what do I do next? What am I doing with this? So this template is designed to put your graphs or your data into and know how to talk about it. So if you were bringing this to a key stakeholder, you're going to talk about the background of your organization. Here are some important, suggested discussion points. Include milestones in security program success, discuss future goals, where have you been, where are you headed, etc. Discuss your accomplishments, new hires, list acknowledgements, updates participated in, etc. So then we're going to have assessing test mark, this is the organization's security posture. This provides an overview on what the NCSR is, a very high level. So you can give this to somebody and you can tell them what the NCSR is. It's spelled out right here for you. It's going to talk about the structure, how it's based on the NIST CSF with the 108 questions. It's going to go over the categories, the maturity scale, etc. So here is the meat of this document. So where are we today? Insert report titled current NCSR results. So going back to the platform, you would go to that dashboard. You could put in that graph, and then possible discussion items that you could talk about on that graph would be call out strengths, right? So maybe it's that, hey, compared to our peers, we're really crushing it. We're ahead in the identify, or overall we're ahead. Call out areas for improvement. So take that data and talk about it. Create a baseline or roadmap based on these results. So for those of you participating for the first time this year, that's really your baseline, right? Here, this is where we are. And then talk about where do we want to go? Where do we want to focus on? Do we want to focus on those areas that are aligned to, that are mapped to the CIS top 6 controls? There's a lot of different discussion that can be had there. Then where have we progressed? It's going to tell you which report to add there and possible discussions as well. So drill down to the different categories to see where you have increased or decreased. Discuss what do you attribute your scores to increasing or decreasing. You could tie in, we added these resources, or we changed direction midway through the year, et cetera. What roadblocks are you seeing? How do we compare against our peers? Same thing, you can paste in that graph. Explain why you might be above or below your peers. We might see some interesting trends between cybersecurity governance this year, et cetera. So the Hipaa compliance report, again, the intent of this report is it's developing a gap assessment and identifying areas of improvement. Most importantly, it serves as a valuable documentation trail. The next two, the control mapping and the question and answers. I mentioned the work group. The work group is actually getting together this upcoming week, and we will be updating this whole document and adding in the controls and the questions and answers, and probably adding more into these areas as well. And Angie, I'm going to be sending you an updated document by the end of next week on this.
Awesome. Sounds great.
So I just think it's important to note, this is actually from our 2017 summary report. It's not final, it's finalized, it's just not able to be shared yet. It is one that is going to Congress, so it's in its final stages of approval. Once it is approved, we are eager to share it with all. But one of the key takeaways from that, and just talking about the value of participating in a self-assessment, is that on average, in 15, 16, and 17, 79% of organizations state that they are being asked for periodic reports on the status of information risks, controls, and/or security from the departments or agencies within their organization. So that just really goes to show the value of having the data that's tied to the NCSR. It's being asked of, and the NCSR provides you some of that. So here we want to talk about participation. As you can see, participation continues to grow. I also want to state I've mentioned peer groups. So here we have 11 through 17, and we had 44 states in 2011, 45 in 2017. State agencies are, Department of Transportation, et cetera, that continues to grow. Our local community is growing. We started off at 60, we're up to 129, and then we have a tribal. What you're going to see in the summary report and in your peer-to-peer reports are that at a very high level, we have a state peer report, a local peer report, and a tribal peer report. So this is this is from our summary report, and this is where is the SLTT community right now in 2017. So these are the function averages. You have identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. This is the average for all of the tribals and the identify, all of the locals and the identify and the state. What's interesting to see here is that, obviously the states are more mature than the locals, and we expect that. They have more resources. And then we go down to the locals and then the tribes. This red bar is a representation of the recommended minimum maturity of implementation and process. Exciting, we saw the states reach that minimum level in the respond function in 2017. We're also seeing that, on average in 16 and 17, the states are maturing at a slower rate. They also are more mature, on average at 3%, where the locals are maturing more rapidly. I think the 2 years, 1 year was 10%, 1 year was 11%. It's interesting, and we're curious to see what we see in the future if they continue to improve on, such a higher rate than the states or not, but that is to be told. So last year, again, we added 18 subsector peer groups. So when we talk about the peer reports, I could be a local, and a local is made up of cities, counties, towns, et cetera, right? So I'm going to have my score versus the locals. But I could also be a local K through 12. So I might be part of several different peer groups. And these are the different peer groups that are available. We do hope to see more, anticipate seeing more. We do require a minimum of 5 organizations per subsector participate, just so their data is, it is anonymous and then a big enough set of data to look at the results with. Andrew, I'm going to hand it over to you now for the additional training opportunities.
Awesome. And specific to the subsector definitions, there is an MSISAP produced document that defines those subsectors. If you have questions, if you have utilities, or we mentioned schools or public hospitals, or if there are entities within your jurisdiction that you would like to encourage their participation in this tool, that document provides really good guidance for who is eligible to do so. So this is the first training event that we have hosted on the MCSR. Again, we're super grateful to Molly because her focus is in launching this survey on Monday. So we had a short window of time to harness her availability. Mark will be hosting 3 additional training sessions that are in person. And if there's interest in conducting those in a webinar format, we can explore that also. But initially, these are being offered as in-person training events, starting with one here at Mark on October 18th. And we will be leaning on the expertise of Molly, but not in person at the event. We're going to be working with a number of the IT professionals in the region. Donna Gomez is one of those who will be helping us on the 18th, and then others throughout the region throughout the month. So the first is the 18th at Mark. Tuesday, October 23rd, Monexa will host a conversation on the Kansas side. And then Tuesday, October 30th, Lee Summit will host a conversation on the Missouri side. And we really appreciate that. The content for those training events will be this information, but given that it will be face-to-face, I think there'll be opportunity to kind of drill down into a little bit more demoing of some of the questions, and maybe this conversation can spawn some additional questions as well as communities get registered and dive into the data completion process. So to register for those events, go to the MARC website, marc.org/cyber. There are links for each event to register online with our database. And then we will also be providing through that same webpage other training opportunities. And we are coordinating with CIS to look at what training events might make sense to host in early 2019 after the cities and counties, after you receive your individual results and after the region receives its baseline aggregated anonymous results, to design useful training opportunities that help us in the areas that will be most impactful. Some of the existing webinars that can provide your staff with more information about the recommended standard of CIS controls are available on your screen now. And again, we'll be working with CIS and also with Molly's team to define the best tools starting in early 2019. Those resources are there. And then there are other resources that Molly will speak to also through DHS and related opportunities. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Molly.
Great, thank you, Angie. I just want to stress if you aren't an MSISAC member, the MSISAC offers a lot of free resources. I encourage you all to check it out. I'm only going to talk about the FedBTE. It's one of the programs that I oversee, but there's a lot of value in being a member. It's free. You obtain a lot of free information sharing, tools, resources, etc. You can reach out to me or just visit our website to become a member. But another excellent training opportunity is FedBTE. So FedBTE is DHS's online on-demand cybersecurity training center. It has many different courses available. Once you log in and become a member, you'll see, I kind of brought up the screen over here, just a catalog of courses, right? Again, it's all you have to do is be an SLTT member or a veteran to have access to this. Registration is easy, but just great courses that are free and are available. So I do encourage you all to take advantage of that. And then again, just a lot of resources through the MSISAC. And you can register for FedBTE with this link right here. Okay, so kind of wrapping things up, we'll do questions and answers, but just want to state October 1, which is Monday, is when the NCSR opens. It'll be open through December 15th. Do encourage you to register today, so you can register by visiting this link right here. I'm sure Angie will be providing you the information as well. And we are super excited, and I guess now let's open it up for any questions.
We've had a good audience. Any questions out there?
Hey, Molly, this is Tony Sage at the City of Liberty. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hey, real quick, I noticed it was mentioned yesterday during the, I think it was yesterday or maybe the day prior, with the last MSI-SAC monthly update, that the CIS control components in a lot of our organizations, some of them may utilize third-party resources to help manage with their IT services. With the NCSR, I know MSI-SAC allowed for, I think, sponsored membership now, such that if I'm a small local government that requires maybe a third party to help me with my IT services, is the NCSR, is that something still that the SLTT will have to register, and then those credentials will have to be shared with that third party if maybe they're relying on a third party to help them participate in this self-assessment? Or is there going to be an allowance for, similar to what they did with the CIS suite, to allow support members to have some sort of login and ability to access that if they're being sponsored?
You know, that is a great question, and we haven't really discussed that internally yet, but I can talk about like what our current process is. So if you're an MSI-SAC member and you register, let's just say, Tony, that you're on the account and you're the primary for the City of Liberty, and I receive a notice from Joe who wants to register to have access to the City of Liberty. Being that you're the primary member and you're the user tied to that account, I would need your permission to access that. So I would shoot you an email and say, hey, so-and-so has requested access. Are you okay with that? As far as giving the third part, I honestly haven't thought about that situation yet.
Well, yeah, the only reason why I bring it up is because I think adding the supporting member program for the MSI-SAC and maybe the CIS services is a great idea, especially for our smaller entities that may not have that staff in-house and they're relying on a qualified third party to assist. They may also be looking at that same qualified third party to help them with the NCSR as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't foresee that being an issue, and I'm imagining that it would follow the process that I just talked about, but I'm going to have to take that offline and just talk with my colleagues about that.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you. Great question. Anyone else? Just want to mention that I'm always here as well if you ever have questions. Angie has my contact information. It's also listed on the website. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. And we're excited when you do go to register, just bringing up the registration page now. I'm incognito, so it's not showing right now, but it'll be on the right-hand corner of that.
And again, participation in the NCSR survey has been one of the recommendations of the task force of the Regional Cybersecurity Strategic Framework for our region. It will help us establish a baseline for the region, and it helps the individual communities establish and monitor that baseline too. The other notable encouraging element is that we'd like everyone to promote Cybersecurity Awareness Month. this is your industry. You all are IT professionals. So I'm sure that's on your radar, but just know that is to city managers and others in your organization too. So we look forward to lots of and questions regarding participation as they come up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angie, and thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everybody.